And we are live. How you doing, David?
Just great. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week, hasn't it?
I was thinking the other day, Nico, when I think I said it on my show. It's like I'm old enough to remember 24/7 news being a new phenomena with CNN and Ted Turner. I was actually in Tegucigalpa when I turned the television on and saw CNN for the first time. And I remember thinking, how are they going to fill the space? And of course, in the beginning of cable news, 24/7 cable news, the journalists had difficulty filling the space. And you used to get a lot of scenes of journalists standing around interviewing people with really nothing to say. And I've noticed, though, in the last 20 years especially, it's like the times have accelerated. So here we are in the middle of summer or nearing the end of summer per se. And it's just a day doesn't go by that's not a full news day. And that's just so unlike the past. And 7 days a week, even the Sundays, something is happening. So it's a different world, very, very much so. And I think 24/7 cable news has fed into that, and I think at the same time it created it. So it's interesting, but that's a long-winded response to lots happening this week. You bet, always.
It's I wonder, is it just because we get the news from all over the world? Is it just that we're creating news when it shouldn't be news in the first place? Because I think that happens a lot too, right?
Oh, there's no question. I think what it's led to, Nico, is the more adversarial form of journalism and a less objectivity. You've got journalists out there pushing an agenda now because they have the opportunity to do so. Whereas in the old newspaper world, magazine, radio, television, 6 o'clock news world, you didn't have time to set an agenda. Journalists didn't have time for that. They just had time to report the news. And so you didn't send journalists off to say, give me a story about, how abortion is good for women. Give me a story that's got a very hard left agenda to it. Reporters just tended to report the news and in a much more objective way. And whether it was Walter Cronkite on the CBS Evening News at 6, or whether it was even the New York Times in those days, a lot less subjective, a lot less keyed into a political agenda than it is today. It's very, very, very much so today. And I think that's because they've got so much time to doing it.
I think I would add that there's a lot of people just repeating each other too. I was just on X earlier, and now because Pierre Poilievre won the by-election in Battle River-Crowfoot, all they're asking, every single lefty seems to be asking the exact same question with the same words. Where is your security clearance? Like every single one of them, it looks like they must have a newsletter they're all part of, and they just, okay, copy paste that, change a couple of words, and that's it. And I'm not even sure they're changing words, because I follow a lot of leftists to see what they're talking about. But
yeah,
they all repeat each other.
I missed that today, Nico. Is that they're back to that one again?
Yeah, yep. It is. They are definitely back on that one. So,
well, that's incredible, because I remember, the former NDP leader. His name escapes me at the moment, but he's a pundit now on CTV, and he said he didn't
Tom
ask for his
Mulcair.
security. Yeah, Tom Mulcair. He said he didn't ask for his security clearance. He didn't get his security clearance when he was the official opposition leader, because he said it would essentially make him co-opted. So he said, I totally understand why Pierre Poilievre has been reluctant to get his security clearance, because it's another way the government co-opts the opposition.
Can you explain that? Because we talked about it, I think it was last Friday, with Jason Levine, and that's what he was explaining, how if you get your security clearance, that means there's also an NDA attached to it. So there's a non-disclosure. There's a non-disclosure that comes with it. So yes, having your security clearance, that means that you're privy to information that the commoners like you and I won't have access to, but that also means that you can't talk about it.
Well, precisely. I had a top secret security clearance in the Air Force because I was privy to a lot of information that other people with lesser classification security clearance couldn't see.
Mhm.
But it also meant when I left the military, I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And there are things that I heard and saw in the military that I can never talk about. And I could be charged under the National Defense Act, which is another NDA there. And that is a fact of life. And so this is why Poilievre doesn't want to hear the top secret briefings, because that makes him privy to the government's narrative. Just as military people and bureaucrats are subject to the same laws. So that means Poilievre cannot openly talk about things he's heard in these top secret briefings. And he figures he's better off getting the information in other ways where he's not being co-opted by the government. And that's the reason he hasn't done it. And that's the reason Tom Mulcair said he didn't get his, because he felt it was a mechanism the government uses to co-opt the official opposition.
It seems like a vicious circle. Like, no, you're doomed if you do, you're doomed if you don't.
Well, I don't think I think it's a no-brainer for Poilievre in this situation, and the journalists are being remarkably unfair about it because they know why, but they're construing it like he's being irresponsible, and I think he's doing his job. That's one thing I've supported him on over the years since he's in the 3 years he was official opposition leader. I think he was doing the right thing because he's not there to be part of the government. He's there there to oppose the government, and I think it's more pertinent now than ever has been with this Carney government. So, but I'm amazed that they're picking up on this again. God damn. I expected, if he didn't get that 80% threshold, which remarkably I predicted on Sunday night, I said it's going to be 80%. It was 80.4%. I think that's the first political prediction I've had right in many, many years. Because, as I said, I predicted Jason Kenney would never be the premier of Alberta. I predicted Danielle Smith would be the premier when she was the leader of the Wild Rose Party. I predicted in the last election Poilievre was going to get a slim minority. So I've been wrong, but I was right about this by-election victory anyway. So.
Talking about that, there's a few things. There's 4 subjects we wanted to cover. So obviously, we're going to talk about Pierre Poilievre. We're going to talk about the Ontario man that was arrested after defending himself against a wanted intruder. I wanted to talk about the new Liberal Gun Buyback program that will be done by the end of 2026. And you wanted to talk about something that you're going to have to inform us about. That is the Carney government recognizing the Metis is how we say it in French, but the Metis Nation, and what it means. And there's a nice bill. I was looking at the post he sent me. There's quite a bit of money attached to that recognition. Huh? Jesus.
Oh yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Before we get into it, I just want to say to the listeners, make sure to like, make sure to comment. We want to hear from you. I will take some comments and show them on screen and address them with David. So make sure to like, make sure to comment. If you're on X, make sure to reshare the stream. But if you really want to be part of the conversation, join us on the YouTube channel at the Poilievre. What's your YouTube channel, David?
And Stand on Guard is the show. Krayden's Right is the channel.
There you have it. So a lot of people are saying hello. So hello. So obviously, unless you've been sleeping under a rock, we know that Pierre Poilievre was elected to gain this seat back on Monday. He did it with 80.4. I thought it'd be a lot less. I thought it'd be in the 60s, maybe the 70s, but it was not a lot different from Damien Keurig. The last time it was like 2% difference, so really not a big difference. But what was different is Bonnie Christley got 10% as an independent, like 9.9%. That's pretty impressive. That surprised me, but she did have mainstream media on her side. They made sure that everybody was aware of her. Do you think that that's something we can expect to see more and more in the future, where independent are actually gaining or winning 10% of the vote, or is that an anomaly in your opinion?
Well, certainly, if there's 214 people running, I think it's a good possibility. But I wasn't too impressed with Bonnie Critchley. I initially
Yeah,
thought, here's a grassroots person. I think she was really a
yeah.
media creation. So I was surprised she got 10% of the vote, but I wasn't surprised Polyev got 80. I think he earned it, or I really do. I can be very critical of Polyev, but I think he earned this. He was out there door knocking, doing town hall meetings, talking to people, and as I watched a lot of the videos that the party put up with his, yeah, they were obviously staged, sitting around having a course with folks, and I thought he didn't really address the Alberta independence issue very well. But I asked the question. I know, as I told you, and as some in the audience know, I've known Pierre Poilievre since before he was a member of parliament, and I really saw somebody I thought was auto-washed over the years. That's the term we use here in the nation's capital for politicians who come here from the hinterland and are transformed by the Ottawa establishment. And I thought over 21 years, Pierre Poilievre became very Ottawa-washed. But the question I asked is it possible to be Alberta washed? Because he really genuinely seemed to be affected by this campaign, this by-election. I think he honestly worked hard. He met people. He was challenged by people. He did his best to try to understand people he had not been around for a long, long time. And I hope there was some kind of transformation in this experience. Certainly, at times he was speaking like a different Pierre Poilievre. Other times he wasn't. And so I don't know what the final verdict is going to be. I think he deserved to win. But I think there seemed to be a genuine change in his outlook on life because of the people he was meeting. How long that'll last, I don't know. But I hope and I pray that this is a transformed Pierre Poilievre who will be bringing back more Alberta than Ottawa to the role of leader of the official opposition. And there's no doubt in my mind he's going to stay in that role till the next federal election. I don't think this leadership review will matter. I also don't think I've seen people in the mainstream media suggest this was a referendum on Alberta separation. That's balderdash. There was nobody running in that election that I'm aware of who was representing the Alberta Prosperity Project or any sort of who was a separatist per se. So I don't think you can in any way construe this race as a referendum or a verdict on Alberta separation. It had nothing to do with that. This was a federalist by-election campaign, and that's all there was to it. I don't think it in any way demonstrated the support or lack of support for separation in that riding. I think in that riding support for independence is very high, but notwithstanding, the people came out to vote for a federalist politician because it was a federalist by-election. I think that's all there is to it. So I'm really pshawing these people out there saying this was a referendum on Alberta independence. No, I think it's nonsense.
What I'm gonna have to disagree with you on the part of the Alberta. I think he just did what he had to do to get reelected. He said it after the debate or during the debate that he wasn't going to be there, right? He said it in so many words as a politician. Obviously, he didn't say it outright, but he made it sound like I'm not going to be here. I'm going to be in Ottawa doing the job on the federal level, like he wants to be the party leader again. So basically, the Battle River is not going to have a real MP representing representing their needs, and I think he's going to have to walk a very, very fine line between supporting Alberta and being a federalist, like representing Ottawa. Because at the end of the day, he's on the federal level. He won't have the choice to walk that line because like you said, the writing in which he was elected is extremely, extremely sovereignist. Like they're very conservative. They're Christian. Like a lot of them are Christian, and a lot of them want to not be part of Canada, whatever that means. If it's independence, if it's a complete just sovereign within Canada, but they want to not be represented by Ottawa anymore. And he's going to have a fine line to walk. And I don't know that he's able to do it without pissing people off, no matter if it's in Ottawa or Alberta. But I don't think he's going to piss off the people in Ottawa. I think the people in Alberta are going to pay the price for having elected him. But I don't think they're stupid either. I think they knew what they were voting for, right? I don't think they were, by voting for Pierre Poilievre, they weren't getting a Klitschko or what was his name, Jonathan Bridges from the PPC. Like they weren't voting for somebody that was from there, that was from their riding, that would represent their interest in Ottawa. So at the same time, they voted for who they wanted to become the party leader again, which it is what it is. They chose, it's their riding, they can do whatever they want. But I don't see Pierre Poilievre being able to walk that line without pissing people off in Alberta, because he doesn't want Alberta to separate. Like he's never talked about it. We all know that it's not in his favor. It's not in the favor of Canada as a whole for Alberta to separate. It's good for Alberta. It's very good for Alberta, and I understand why Alberta wants to separate. Or a lot of people in Alberta, should I say. It's not, obviously, it's not everybody, but do you think he's going to be able to walk that line? Do you think that he's not shooting himself in the foot by never being there, by not representing their interest?
Well, I said from the beginning this was going to be a difficult riding for him because it's in the heart of Alberta independence country. And I said that throughout the campaign. I'm sure he was getting a lot of pushback at the doors. That didn't make the videos.
Of course not.
I'm sure, I'm sure he was getting pushback from a lot of folks at the door. And I'm positive it's going to be a very difficult riding for him. As I said, when he decided to run in Damien Couric's riding, and of course the mystery for me is Damien Couric says he's running again. Does he think he's running in Battle River-Crowfoot, or is Damien thinking of running someplace else? I don't know. The question I also ask is Pierre Poilievre going to be running in that riding in the next federal election, or is this merely temporary? Because it would have been a lot easier for Pierre Poilievre to run in an Ottawa Valley seat, and there's a couple of them there that they're fairly conservative seats that have been held by the Tories for decades, including the seat that I'm currently living in, the constituency I'm currently living in. Conservative MP, been here since the Canadian Alliance days, and so talking about Scott Reid. So it's there's also another Ottawa Valley riding where the MP has been there for literally 30 years. He could possibly look at that one too if that MP is considering retiring. Can he do it? Can he walk that fine line? Well, sure he can. In the meantime, in the short term, I think he can do it. Is Pierre Poilievre committed to federalism? Well, of course he is. That's what he's advertised as, and he's invested his entire adult life in Canadian federalism, in Confederation. He's invested 21 years into that, and I can't see him walking away from that anytime soon, even if support continues to grow for the independence option in Alberta. I can't see Pierre Poilievre walking away from that. That's just become part of his constitution. It's become part of his DNA at this point, being a federalist. But certainly it is fraught with difficulties, and there's no question about it, because support for independence is very high in that riding, and it's going to remain a source of friction with Pierre Poilievre. And is he going to devote enough time for the folks there? Probably not, because he's going to be focused on being the leader of the opposition. That is how Pierre Poilievre sees himself. He certainly doesn't see himself as a MP first. He wanted to get back that position very, very much. And he's got it back now, and he soon will, as soon as he's sworn in as a member of Parliament. He'll be the leader of the opposition again, and that's where he sees himself. That's where he sees it. So yeah, I think he can do it in the short term. In the long term, I think he's probably going to be looking elsewhere.
There's a few comments out there that are very, very interesting, and one I'd like to ask you about because I saw that a few times, and people are saying that Pierre Poilievre, by going to Alberta, he did it on purpose because, as you said, he could have been in your riding where you reside, where it's conservative. Would have been a lot easier for him to run in Ontario. He wouldn't have to put cowboy hats and ride horses during his campaign. He could have just continued wearing his suit. But he decided. Some people are saying that he decided to run in Alberta in order to go against the sovereigntist movement by having a federalist like Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, which heavily, heavily favored in Alberta. If you look at the map, it's basically blue. You need to zoom in very close and see Edmonton to see it any different color than blue. But do you think that that was done on purpose, that he's there to kind of fight against the sovereigntist movement, considering that he is a federalist after all?
It's plausible, but if that's the case, he didn't do much of a job defending federalism. Whenever he was asked about the question, his answers were just awful. And I think of the one that they actually put the video, which is probably the best response he had, if his communications people have any intelligence at all. But the response they put out was really quite bad, because he did not provide very good reasons for Alberta to stay in Confederation. And one of the reasons he didn't provide very good reasons is that Pierre Poilievre supports equalization in its current form.
Yeah.
So that's the real sticking point with most folks in Alberta. Why are we giving Ontario and Quebec $2.2 billion every year plus? And is this ever going to stop? And Pierre Poilievre is not prepared to stop it. So he gave a very strange history lesson about how Brian Mulroney just loved Western Canada, which is, of course, nonsense. As I said previously when we discussed this, Brian Mulroney was the reason for the Reform Party and Preston Manning, because Preston Manning said the West wants in. Brian Mulroney would not let the West in. So for Pierre Poilievre to stand up there and to say Brian Mulroney was a great hero of to Western Canadians, anybody older than 45 would probably recall that Brian Mulroney was not a great friend of Western Canada. He was a great friend of Quebec primarily and Ontario. He was a continuation of Pierre Trudeau in terms of where his loyalties and his alliances were. So I found that profoundly silly for Poilievre to suggest Brian Mulroney was a great Westerner. And he had no connection to the West at all, and I really didn't give a damn. Just realized that was the economic engine of Canada, and he better keep it happy to some degree. But I think he failed at doing that. Then, of course, he brushed through the Jean Chrétien years too as being great because the oil sands were being developed, and that's all he could come up with. And so I don't think he satisfied the woman who stood up and asked the question on that particular town hall night. So God only knows how he did elsewhere. I'd like to know if any of your viewers attended other town hall meetings where Pierre Poilievre was asked about the separation question. Did he do even worse? Did he rise to the occasion at any time? And of course, we'll never know. But if that's the answer he gave at the doorsteps, I'm sure a lot of people were shaking their heads, saying, Brian Mulroney. That's who was our savior here in the West. So if he was running in Alberta as an icon of federalism, yeah, I can see the party thinking that. But if that's the case, he was not well armed to defend federalism, because he clearly didn't do that very well when he was asked about it. So interesting. And but once again, whether it's liberal or conservative or NDP, the people in Ottawa, at Parliament Hill, they really don't take this very seriously. They don't take Western alienation. They never have. They don't take Western alienation very seriously. And even though the poll numbers are showing increased, the strongest support for Alberta independence in the history of Canada, they're not taking this very seriously, and they really don't think these people deserve a good answer. Just, hey, come on, get with it. This is a great country. It's Canada. We always punched above our weight at Juno Beach. It's a great country, and just be satisfied with that. And that's not good enough anymore. And I don't think he was a great representative for Canadian federalism. But I think the people who stage managed a lot of this from Ottawa really didn't think people deserved better answers.
One of the things I can't stop thinking about is, what is it going to change that Pierre Poilievre has been elected again? Because we've spoken about this before. You know my opinion on Pierre Poilievre. I don't think he's not a good leader. He's weak. He doesn't stand for anything. That guy needs to be replaced. But by who is really the great question, right? Who could take over Pierre Poilievre as the Conservative Party? So I think he's in a spot where he has no contention, so he's going to stay where he is. But what is he going to change? What is it that he can do? Because he's been the party leader since 2022, so over 3 years now, give or take. September 10th, so call it 3 years. So he's been the party leader for 3 years. I don't feel that he's done anything worth mentioning in the past 3 years, but somehow there's a lot of conservatives out there that believe that Pierre Poilievre will one day be prime minister, that they can't wait for September for him to go back to the House of Commons, like he's going to change the world, or he's going to change Canada at least. I don't understand why people keep on thinking that. I really don't get it. I don't see how that's even possible, considering he's been at it for 3 years and hasn't changed anything. What do you think what does it mean for Canada to have Pierre Poilievre as the Conservative leader? Do you really see a difference coming? Do you see a change coming? Do you think that there's going to be a revival of a conservative movement under Pierre Poilievre's leadership?
If he stops listening to people in his communications department, Jenny Byrne is on her way out. That's probably the best news I've heard about the party in years. So if he really wants this to work, I think it's up to Pierre Poilievre. If he wants to be the principal conservative he's often posed as in the past, the principal conservative who ran for the leadership of the party 3 years ago, who brought coffee and donuts to the Freedom Convoy. If that Pierre Poilievre really exists, he better materialize in the next 6 months. Even though the best thing Pierre Poilievre has going for him right now is Mark Carney is headed for catastrophe, because right now Mark Carney continues to enjoy this honeymoon with Canadian voters. God only knows why. I saw a post today on X saying what net zero means is that Mark Carney adds up to a big zero.
Yeah,
he's achieved absolutely nothing. And so next to Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre looks like a more energetic, more capable leader. The best thing about Pierre Poilievre is he's a very effective speaker and debater in question period in the House of Commons. He's very good optic-wise. And I think he will continue to do that in a way that I don't think anybody else in the front bench can do. So that's what he's got going for him. But as I say, I think he will be the next prime minister, because I think Carney is headed for disaster. But whether or not it's going to be liberal light with Poilievre remains to be seen. It's up to Pierre Poilievre to capture voters with a message that resonates beyond powerful paychecks and safe streets and safe communities. He needs to talk about how Canada needs not just to be tweaked a little. We are headed for tyranny in this country. And if Pierre Poilievre can't talk in those stark terms, then we are headed for liberal light. But if he can realize what's at stake in this country, how close we are to losing our fundamental, our foundational freedoms, if he can actually address that, I think he could actually win a landslide with Canadians saying, I heard somebody talk about the Canada I remember or the Canada I never knew, and I'm voting Conservative. Can he do it? I don't know. But like I say, I'm going to hope and pray he can, because I'm not going to give up on Pierre Poilievre. I'm going to continue to criticize him when he says and does the wrong things, but I haven't given up on him quite yet.
You and I are on definitely different pages on that one, because I don't see him doing anything special, anything new, like liberal light. I would just call him liberal. I wouldn't even put the light there. And it seems like there's a few people in the comment section that seems to believe the same, that they're afraid that Pierre Poilievre won't do the dirty work needed to get back on track, because to stop what's going on in Canada, to bring back the I was born in the 80s. I grew up in the 80s and the 90s. And, I was talking about this on my other show this week, where I couldn't have imagined growing up in a better place than where I live. Like small town, middle of nowhere, had access to the woods. It was very Canadian, right? When you think Canadian, I had a Canadian childhood. And now I look at where the country's at. My son's not going to experience that. He's not going to experience the Canada I grew up in. And I don't even know if Pierre Poilievre remembers what the Canada he grew up in actually is. And this is what he doesn't seem to be fighting for. And that's what bothers me. I'm a Christian. I read the Bible, and Jesus at one point, he goes ballistic and he starts flipping table in a temple, right? He starts just bashing everything. And that's what I want to see. Like I was just talking about that today. I want to see commoners, just regular people in politics again. I don't want to see career politician. I want to see just regular dudes running for office and ending up in Ottawa and flipping tables, getting escorted by security because they're losing it. I'm tired of seeing those career politician politicking in the House of Commons, like you're saying. Like Poilievre's very good at that. Very good. He's very, very good. But at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything, right? Outside of the House of Commons, it doesn't mean anything. It never translates to anything. But I don't know, for the people out there that are listening to this, what do you guys think? Do you think that we need politicians that are more polished, like a Pierre Poilievre, like a guy that I dislike but I have to respect is Obama, great orator. Don't like him as a politician, but he was a great speaker. You got guys like Bill Clinton. I've seen Bill Clinton live years and years ago, and as much as I don't agree with his politics, he's a very good speaker. So he's your typical, like Pierre Poilievre is your typical, very polished politician. But is that what you guys want? Because personally, I'm tired of this. I wish for regular dudes to lose their mind, ask real question, and when they don't get answered, like you always do in question periods, you never hear the real question because they're just bouncing it back. I just want somebody to lose their shit, to just say, can you just, even if they swear, I would just, can you fucking answer the question? Can you like, I don't care, escort me out. I just want people to lose it, because we are, as you said, in a point in Canada where we're about to cross that bridge where it might be too late. Like I say this all the time, but to me, Mark Carney is not going to do 4 years. He's just here to finish the job that Trudeau started, and he's doing very well right now on destroying the rest of Canada. So I don't know. Don't you want to see that? Don't you want to see people that actually seem to care? They're ready to get arrested. They're ready to get escorted out of Parliament and the House of Commons because they just lost it. They're just done. They're tired of seeing their people suffering. Because again, 1 out of 4 Canadians right now has problems affording daily necessities as per the food bank. 1 out of 4. So 25% of Canadians are hurting, if it's not more. Like, that's not even talking about people that are living paycheck to paycheck, because that's probably the vast majority of Canadians. But it never seems to translate in Parliament. When you listen to them talk, they never get that part, right? They make 200 grand a year. They don't have to worry if not more. They make a lot of money for what they do, and they don't seem to care. So wouldn't you want just regular dudes, just commoners, just people that care about their community to run for office and really try to change it in Ottawa?
Well, of course, and that's what I've been fighting for my entire political life and my journalistic life. I've been covering this for 30 years. I can barely stand watching Question Period anymore at this point in my life. It's tortuous. It's difficult. It is absolutely absurd. It's theater of the absurd. I know it as well as anybody. And why we continue to hang news pegs on question period when nothing is ever answered and nothing really is ever questioned. And it's the same old every day. Of course, I'd like to see the city, this government, this deep state shaken up. And do I think Poilievre can do it? I don't know, but he's the only option we have right now. This is why I say what's happening in Alberta might be the best thing for Canada to shake this country up, to put the fear of God and maybe the fear of Alberta into the hearts and minds of these central Canadians who think it's going to keep going as it's always gone, which means they keep the power in their collective hands. I think it's time this political lobby, this these parties of talking points realize that nobody's listening anymore and that they're talking to an empty room. And this is why I say it's up to Pierre Poilievre. If he wants to be a truly transformational prime minister, a prime minister who understands, the choice is his. He can stop listening to the people who tell him to play it safe, and he can do something different. Like I say, the verdict for me is still out whether he can do that. In the last 3 years, yeah, he's taken one step forward, 2 steps back at times. He's failed at a number of crucial junctures, as far as I'm concerned, to live up to principled conservatism. And that to me has been painful to watch. But this is why I say what's happening in Alberta is more than just Alberta. It's more than just what's happening in one province. It's about a pushback to what Canada has become. And it's not the country I remember as a boy. It's not the country that my forefathers fought for. It's a country that has been completely emasculated and completely immersed in woke political correctness. And I don't recognize this country anymore. And frankly, I think it's destined for complete destruction if nobody can change this. And if Poilievre can't change this, and if he doesn't demonstrate a willingness to change it, I do think this country's on the verge of complete breakup in the next year to two.
That we definitely agree. Like, forget the Poilievre part. I don't think he has it in him to change it, but I agree with you that if something's not done within the next couple of years, this country's done. Like, it's not going to be livable anymore because the boomers are going to start paying for it. Like, they think that an equity tax on their houses is not happening. It's just a matter of time before Carney brings that in. So I agree. A year to 2 years, I'll call it 2 years for sake of argument, is Canada's not going to be recognizable, and I don't think it's going to be savable anymore unless somebody from down south saves us from ourselves, which that could happen too. Because obviously what's going on with the US is, like, Trump is taking advantage of what's going on right now, and he's helping, or Mark Carney is helping Trump take advantage of Canada, right? And I'm not saying that as a good thing. I'm just saying, spend a lot of my time in the US. Trump's doing what he thinks is best for the US. Whatever that means for Canada, he's not there to help us. But Carney's making it easy on him. And the past 10 years of liberal policies have made it extremely easy on Trump to do what he's doing right now. So he's going to be, he has help. And I believe that it's all planned. It's all done on purpose because Mark Carney's not stupid. Read his book Values. He's a very smart guy. He knows exactly what's going on right now. Just again today, 50% tariff on steel or byproducts made with steel, 50% tariff on Canadian goods. It's a big joke. He's not addressing it, and unfortunately, we're gonna get screwed. And there's a lot of people in the comments that seem to believe that we need a guy like Donald Trump. Like, I'll be 100% honest. If I had a choice to vote for Donald Trump, Pierre Poilievre, and Mark Carney, I would take Donald Trump a million times out of a million. Love him, hate him. That guy moves the needle. There's no such thing as staying the same with Donald Trump. If he gets involved in something, he's changing it. A status quo under Trump does not exist. And that's exactly what we need in Canada. But do we have a guy like him, right? Do we have a guy like Trump in Canada to do the job Pierre Poilievre can do?
Well, Donald Trump said today or yesterday, I'm doing a piece tomorrow about this for Human Events. He wants to get rid of mail-in ballots and electronic voting. Mm-hmm. Thank God somebody's addressing this. Do you think anybody in Canada would even bring this up? No. It's never going to. It's not going to be an issue. And no, we can't go there. Donald Trump's going there, and I think that's great. Exactly. This is a guy who shakes things up. But he drives me nuts sometimes for the whiplash foreign policy. You don't know if he wants peace in Ukraine or not. And it's back and forth. Is there a long-term game plan here? Well, could be. I was listening to Colonel Doug McGregor this week, and he's convinced that maybe there is a game plan here, and maybe it's about keeping the United States out of Ukraine. Maybe it's about keeping boots off the ground. Maybe it's about getting NATO out of the situation. Maybe Trump is working towards a solution. So, yeah, he frustrates me, but I say, thank God he's not afraid to talk about those issues that other politicians just want to pretend aren't there. He talks about the elephant in the room, and that's the first thing he talks about. And that's what we need in Canada. Is there anybody on the horizon in Canada like that? No, absolutely not. I can't think of anybody. Is there a renegade, maverick, conservative politician sitting in the House of Commons who would dare to talk about these things? Not really, no. Not really. This is establishment with a capital E, all over, and all of the political parties represented in Canada, in the House of Commons. So that I'm 100% with you on that. I wish we had a Donald Trump in this country who would shake things up, so we know we're still alive. Right now, I think we're comatose at times in this country.
Yeah, I don't see it happening either. We don't have the same mentality in Canada as they do in the US. They're very, very different. They have a very different way of thinking, especially when it comes to politics. Americans are extremely involved in politics. In Canada, not so much. It seems like too much of an effort for the average Canadian to even pay attention to what's going on in politics. So you wanted to talk about, we'll change the subject. We've been at it for 45 minutes, and I think we could talk about it for 3 hours straight. So if we're going to try to touch at least one other subject, you wanted to cover something that I was not aware of. I'm going to have to do more research because, man, just the post you sent, it's like post after post after post after post after post. So you sent me something along the lines of the Carney government recognizes the Metis Nation. What does that mean? Like, I do this all the time, like land acknowledgement. Like he had to do a land acknowledgement. But what does that mean?
Don't get me started on land. That is the worst farce. One of the biggest farces in Canada. The unceded territory. Sorry, pal, it was ceded. We won. It's history. Man, I'm sick of that. But I'm also sick of this identity politics. Now we've got, apparently and reportedly, the guy who is now the CEO of the independent nation, the autonomous nation of Métis, Saskatchewan, Richard Quintel, was a lifetime bureaucrat. And I don't know what Carney's calling it now, but Trudeau called it the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Department. Changed it from the old Indian Affairs, Indian and Northern Affairs. I don't know what Carney's calling it now. But from what I read today, this guy was a senior bureaucrat. And now he's got this high-paying job as the chief executive officer of the independent nation of Métis, Saskatchewan. And I'm thinking, here we go again with this is intrusive racism. This is what I call it. And anybody with half a brain would say we have become one of the most racist societies on the face of the earth. We identify everybody by racial superiority. And if you happen to have been born First Nations or Métis, you're better than those European people who came over here. You're better than the French and English. You've got special rights. You've got special claims, land claims, special entitlement to hunt and fish whenever you please. And you know what it reminds me of? I'm going to have to say this carefully because I don't want the show to be demonetized. There was a government in Germany in the 1930s that acted the same way. They had a hierarchy of race from what they called Aryans all the way down to Jewish people. And in between, there were Slavs and there were people who were part Aryan, part Jewish, just like our Metis people. And they couldn't decide what to do about these half Aryan, half Jewish people. And this is what the debate was in this German dictatorship. They went on, obsessed with racial politics, obsessed with who was better than the other person. Was this race more equal or less equal? What did they belong in the hierarchy, or were they considered to be subhumans? This is how Canada operates. We have a hierarchy of race in this country. We are obsessed with identifying people by their race and ethnicity. We are obsessed with saying this person is better than that person because of racial identity. And it is so toxic. It is so destructive. And I am sick to death of it. I have my entire adult life, I have argued and pleaded for equality under the law. One Canada, and I don't care where you came from. I don't care where your ancestors came from. I don't care what the color of your skin is, your religion, your ethnicity, or where you what you are composed of. You're equal under the law. You're a Canadian citizen or you're not. And that's what we should be headed for. And, to get back to Paulie, you think he's ever going to talk like that? No.
Nope.
That is so politically off the map. But my God, we've got to get there. Because otherwise, we're going to have a nation that is completely race-based. The old Reform Party used to talk about this. They used to say no race-based fishing and hunting rights, no race-based judicial system. That, of course, was forgotten when the Reform Party became the Canadian Alliance, that became the Conservative Party Canada. All of that great material was flushed out. So it was just basically the PC party warmed over again. And we need to identify this. And for some, to have a grand poobah now of the Métis Nation of Saskatchewan, to me, is not just absolute idiocy. It is another nail in the coffin of this country, of this woke, destructive nation. And I tell you, I stopped going to my Rotary Club meetings because they had to do this land entitlement thing before every meeting. I said, I don't want to listen to it. I can't listen to it. Because it is balderdash. And of course, when King Charles was in Canada for the speech from the throne, he had to tell us all that Parliament Hill is sitting on unceded lands. Really? So we don't own Parliament Hill. Canadians don't own Parliament Hill. Some 2 tribes do. And I thought, what sickening, horrifying nonsense this is. And we spew this out constantly, and I'm sick to death of it.
And for the man you were talking about, what did you say his name was? The guy that was
Richard Quintel.
177 million yearly budget given to that Métis nation. How insane are almost $200 million a year to do what? To do what exactly? Like, exactly, it's absolutely insane. The billions of dollars that they give to the First Nations yearly, and only a certain small group of people seem to be taking advantage of those billions.
Yeah, they're called the Chiefs, and that's been going on for decades. Because I did research on this when I was working for a Reform MP way back in the 90s, and that's what's going on here. Because why are people still starving on reserves? Why is the water not clean? Why is there such high levels of addiction on reserves? It's because they're not benefiting from these billions of dollars. These people, they benefit when they move off the reserve. The only people benefiting is the leadership that wants the system in perpetuation, because they're making a lot of money off of this, and they're not sharing it with these poor Indigenous people who never get ahead on the reserve. And my heart goes out to those people. And I say, get off the reserve, live like every other Canadian, because you can do it. You've got the expertise, you've got the experience, you've got the brains, you've got the know-how. You can do it just as well as anybody. Don't let the chiefs exploit you anymore.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling that they don't address this. That this is not even a topic up for discussion. Like they don't. You
No.
cannot talk about that in Canada. Like we talked about this last week, and I did a really good reel off of one of your rants because I know how to trigger people, right? I can recognize that it was a subject you hold dear to your heart. So we talked about it, and I just let you go. And the rant is like 3 minutes straight. I don't even know that you were able to breathe during that time, but the algorithm on Instagram dislike this type of video. It did very poorly, yet
Oh yeah.
I couldn't have agreed with you more. I don't understand why this is not even up for conversation. Like talking about First Nations in Canada is as bad as talking about abortion in Canada. Like those to me are equivalent at what we cannot address. And it doesn't even matter that it's liberals or conservative. As you said, Pierre Poilievre will not touch that one with a 10-foot pole, just like he didn't touch Bill C2, like he would never touch abortion. So how can we move forward if such subjects cannot be spoken about? Because the conversation's not there, right? Yeah.
I'm not sure we can, because even though the system, the institution is racist, everything about the reserve system is racist. It's basically another form of apartheid. And I've been saying this for 25, 30 years. It's no different than South African apartheid. We keep all these people on reserves, and a small little group of them benefit. So the institution is racist. But you bring the subject up, and you're the racist for asking questions. You're the racist for questioning the racism. This is how they have won this debate over the years. It's not even a debate, because we're not allowed to ask any questions. We're not allowed to say there's something incredibly unjust about this system. And you know what? It seems racist to me to have this separate but equal system. Wasn't that called? I'm sorry. Wasn't that Jim Crow in the old South, where you had segregation based on race? That's racism, and that's what we've had in Canada for a long, long time. And I'm glad to see more. 2/3 of Canadians want evidence about these unmarked graves, which is complete lie. It's a complete lie. And there's no evidence at all for this. And more Canadians are saying, excuse me, can you provide some evidence rather than the CBC says so?
Yeah.
That's all they do.
Yeah, I had a podcast with Jim McMurtry talking about this, and there's zero proof, zero. Yet they keep on talking about it. I think it was this week or last week they said they found another 23. And I'm like, where? Like, where? Yet Trudeau was never held responsible for all the churches that got burned down after he made those false allegations with no proof. Because those churches, it all happened because of his statements. Nobody ever talked about it afterwards. He was able to ride into the sunset with a $9 million pension of taxpayers' money and no repercussions whatsoever. I don't know if you saw that, but he in the past month, he's taking 3 trips. He's been to Vancouver with his first son. He's been to Switzerland with his second, and he just came back from Italy with his daughter. And that's the guy that put a carbon tax on us. That's the guy that said that we needed to pay more in order to fight climate change. And he's just flying throughout the world, enjoying his time off.
Yeah, waiting for his next appointment, which will be with the UN or the WEF, one of the two, so he can continue to exercise his considerable talents at destroying countries. And that's what he does best. But that will be obviously the next step for Justin Trudeau. And I don't think he can stand not being in the news every day. For an ego-driven man like that, it must be horrible. So I guess you go out with Katy Perry, grab a few headlines here and there, but it's maddening, I'm sure, because he's no longer front and center in the media every day. And I'm sure he's trying to find a way back in. But God help us if he does find a way back in.
He's I'm a big fan of Seinfeld, and they had a great episode on beards, on Elaine trying to be the beard for a gay guy. And when I saw that Katy Perry out with Justin Trudeau, I'm like, there you go. He just bought a beard again. He's trying to convince us that he's not out of the closet yet. It's he's gonna come back. I think you're right. People like him too much. He's gonna show up again. But before we go, we have like 5 minutes. I wanted you to say what you thought about the Ontario man that was arrested. So 3 o'clock in the morning, he wakes up. There's somebody in his house, somebody in his apartment to be exact, and they end up in a fight. A weapon was used. I read allegedly that it was a knife, like a kitchen knife, and that's what he used on the guy. But the intruder was armed. They don't say which weapons were used, but I got to tell you, I don't know if you know this, but I'm an old fighter. I have 20 years of martial art experience. I used to fight as an amateur. I'm North American amateur champion in Muay Thai. I'm a big fan of guns. I'm a big fan of knives. I've learned how to use all of those beautiful tools. And if you get into my house, you forfeited your life. If I wake up in the middle of the night, my wife's there, my kid's there, it's not even up to discussion. We'll see what happens. But whatever happens, you deserved it. So what do you think? That's my opinion on this. I can rant about this for an hour. But what do you think about what should happen in Canada? Should we have castle law? Should that be implemented? Should somebody have the power? Because in Alabama, where I spend a lot of time, you don't ask that question. If you're going to somebody's property, you're getting shot. And it doesn't matter where you are on that property. You don't need to be in the house. You're going to get shot. And the sheriff is going to be on your side. He's going to be way okay with you shooting intruders. So do you think we should have something similar in Canada, at least castle law?
Absolutely. No question. It's outrageous to me, and it demonstrates again the lack of respect, the lack of any constitutional respect for private property in this country. And we see this time and time again. Thank God, Doug Ford came out today and he said, it seems to me there's something wrong here. Yeah, Doug, there's something wrong here. The police are not on our side. They're on the side of the criminals. Because here they go, they arrest a man who's protecting his property. He's protecting his family from a guy who could potentially injure or kill them. And he gets arrested? How incredibly inverted is that? How incredibly stupid and asinine is that? Oh, but Canada is we're such a civilized country. Here, you're not allowed to shoot the intruder. The intruder can shoot you. And you attempt to intervene, we're going to charge you with assault, you SOB, for daring to think you have private property protection or you can defend your family or your own life against an intruder. This is insanity, but that's what Canada is all about today. Another story that to me demonstrates the complete moral collapse of Canada and how incredibly corrupt it is, and how the police that I grew up loving and respecting, I worked with police in the military, they don't work for us anymore, Nico. They work for those other people. And this is why they don't arrest people for doing incredibly horrible things if those people happen to be part of a politically protected group.
Jesus.
And now, part of a politically protected group is apparently intruders and assailants who break into your house. They're protected too. Mm-hmm. So Canada has gone insane.
This is one thing that most Canadians don't realize, but one of my old clients is a prosecutor out of Oakville, just outside of Toronto, where I used to live. And we had that discussion because I'm a martial artist. I want to know what I can and cannot do. And he printed me the self-defense portion of the criminal code. I read it. I got back to him the weekend afterwards, and I'm like, sorry for my language, but I was like, what the fuck did I just read? I'm like, this document is basically telling me that I'm allowed to use reasonable force. It has to be proportional to the attacker's force. And as I'm reading this, I'm like, there's no black line to say this is what it is. Like in the US, a lot of states have castle law. If somebody's on your property uninvited, you are allowed to deal with the threat as you see fit. Canada is all to the judge. So every single time, so that guy that got in a fight that probably ended up stabbing the intruder, and I'm assuming that's what it is. This is what I read, but that ended up hurting him bad. I know he's gonna walk. I'm sure he's not gonna go to jail. He's not gonna go to prison. He's gonna end up walking. There's many cases like him where he did end up walking, but often the process is the punishment. Just going through the hoops, the going through court, going through having to pay for a lawyer, having to defend yourself, having your name in the media, just whatever happens to you is the punishment. And that will dissuade other people from acting the way that they should do. So we're in a situation where our criminal code doesn't protect us. We're at the mercy of the judge. And that's what's scary, is that if he has a lenient judge, the judge can just say, you're good, no problem, don't worry about it. You still have to go through the hoops. You still have to go through the media. You still have to take the abuse that he's probably taking right now. But one of the points that I was coming up with today is, do you think it's a possibility? I don't know enough about the way provincial law works compared to federal law. Maybe you don't know either. I want to find a lawyer. I've approached some lawyers to come on my show to speak about this, but can you imagine if a place like Alberta, that's trying to be independent of Canada, even if they stay within Canada, they want to be different from Canada? Do you think it's possible for a province to put a castle law in place, even though there's not one on the federal level, similar to what the US is? Because the castle doctrine in the US is state-based. Some state have it, some state don't. But as far as I know, it's not federal. It's based on the state. So do you see a possibility of us having that on a provincial level, like a place like Alberta, for example?
I think it's entirely possible, especially under a premier like Daniel Smith, who has asserted Alberta's authority in many aspects, in many jurisdictions, and that would be one of them. I think it's entirely possible. Alberta would be, I think, the only province, by the way, that would try this.
Yeah. Yep.
The only one with enough common sense to say, "Hey, something's skewed here, something really wrong. Let's change it." Yeah, I am totally convinced Alberta could act on its own, because Daniel Smith is pushing the envelope in other ways. I think she could push the envelope on this and do it and win. I hope she does.
Yeah, I think that's why I'm using Alberta, because I don't see it happening anywhere else in Canada. But she has spoken about bringing gun rights back, free speech back. So I don't know that she's going to do like the first two amendments in the US. But if there's one person in Canada, I agree with you. If there's one place in Canada it can happen, in Alberta, I'm just wondering if it could happen on a provincial level. And I believe that it could. I don't see why not. But again, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, so I don't know what's possible or not. But that's something that she definitely should address. I would love to see it.
You have to remember, Nico, Canada is a confederation that is based on provincial rights that have been eroded over the century by Ottawa. But we are supposed to be a country where there are states' rats, as they say in the southern states. This is about provincial rights should be paramount in this country. That's why the provinces own their resources. Ottawa likes to think they do, but they don't. Constitution says otherwise. We have a country, we have a constitution where provinces have strong rights. Unfortunately, most premiers won't assert those rights, and they cave and they kneel to Ottawa. Daniel Smith ain't doing that. Thank God for Daniel Smith.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I like her. If there's one politician I'd vote for, it would have probably been her. So yeah, I'm just gonna take this comment because this is how simple the First and the Second Amendment is. First Amendment is free speech. Second is gun right. If you lose the first, you got the second to regain the first. That's it. Right. That's your two first constitution. That's the First and Second Amendment of the U.S. It's that easy. Beautifully said, Jack B. That's perfect. So, Dave, we're gonna end it there. We went 5 minutes late. I think we could go a lot further. We could go a lot longer than this, but I appreciate your time. And yes, that's funny. Sylvie's one somebody that's always on my show. Nico has a political crush on Smith. I don't know that I have a political crush on her because she's still a politician, but I don't know. She's been very clever in the way she's walking the line between not saying that she wants to separate and making it possible to stay within Canada. She's been very clever in the way that she handles it. So I have a lot of respect for that, because most politicians could not pull off. I don't know of one other politician that could pull off what she's pulling off in Alberta right now. So
I agree. Excellent job what she's doing with these town halls. I think that's all she can do. And as I said, I've known Premier Smith since we both worked at the Calgary Herald, and I have a lot of time for her. I personally like her very much, and I think she's the voice of principled conservatism in this country insofar as any politician could be or can be. And I have a lot of time for her.
I agree. So maybe, Sylvie, you made a point. Maybe we both have a political crush on her. Maybe I should add her to the background. Like at the corner, I'm just going to put a little picture of Daniel Smith at the back, at the bottom left. Maybe I'll do that for next time. Thank you again, David, for your time. And we'll definitely be seeing you next Wednesday. For all the people listening, Nico, thank you for your comments. And we'll see you next week.
Okay. Always a pleasure to talk to you. See you next week.
Yeah. Bye.